Hello, my name is Caleb O'Neill with the University of Missouri Extension, and I'm a field specialist in plant science based out of Southwest Missouri. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about elderberry. The American elderberry has definitely come onto the scene, especially in Missouri agriculture. Missouri is probably the foremost in the nation for American elderberry production, and there's many health benefits that come with the fruit of American elderberry, but it's also a very enjoyable plant to cultivate and to enjoy. As you can see, we're surrounded by beautiful plants with gorgeous white flowers that have a wonderful fragrance to them. And so we figured we'd do a video today discussing how to establish a planting like this. So American elderberry is traditionally a very hardy and tough plant. Many farmers in the area are very familiar with this, growing in the ditches on their property or in the fence rows. It's notorious for being just about the only thing that a farmer can't kill. Naturally, whenever we go to cultivate it and put it into production, we might find some challenges along the way in keeping it alive, but it's traditionally a very hardy plant. Most frequently, producers will establish an elderberry orchard utilizing what's known as a direct hardwood propagation. So a piece of material from an elderberry plant that we are going to plant in the dormant season, ideally, and allow that propagule to grow into a fully mature plant in the coming years. Elderberry can be propagated via open pollinated seeds. And an issue that you encounter with that is you don't necessarily know the parentage of the resulting progeny. If it's being pollinated by a plant in the ditch that maybe doesn't have great fruiting characteristics, we don't want to cross-pollinate with unknown sources. So whenever we propagate with hardwood cuttings like this is a clonal propagation, so we know exactly the genetic makeup of that plant that's going to be resulting. This is very handy whenever we have a plant that has a nice fruiting characteristic and we want to keep those excellent production qualities in our orchard. So using hardwood propagules is a really good way to ensure you have good genetics in your orchard. And there's also some pest management that we can do whenever we propagate using hardwood propagules as well. Typically, establishing an elderberry orchard in Southwest Missouri with non-rooted hardwood propagules like this, we want to do this in the dormant season. So winter is a really good time to actually be out there pushing these sticks in the ground and setting yourself up for a spring orchard. Whenever we take these hardwood propagules, we'll actually do that as the plants are going fully dormant. So in Southwest Missouri, that's typically December to January that these plants will go fully dormant. We will take cuttings off of the standing material of those adult plants, and each of these cuttings can then turn into a plant wherever you stick it. The data that we've done within the university has indicated that it is advisable to plant these hardwood propagules early in winter. In Southwest Missouri, that means January into February. If you purchase rooted plants, you can do a spring planting or even a fall planting. But if you're just planting with these hardwood propagules, you really need to get those in the ground early, well before spring. That way those sticks have time to really break dormancy with the natural cues of spring, and they're really ready to hit the ground running whenever spring does come. It takes about 6 weeks for this propagule to develop a callus on that basal cut and start to develop root hairs. So if we plant a non-rooted stick like this in April or May, whenever things are starting to get a little bit hot and maybe a little bit dry, there's a very low chance that propagule is going to turn into a healthy plant. But if we get them in the ground early and have them time to nestle in, there's a really good chance that we're going to have a successful plant coming out of that propagule that spring. What to expect in that first year after you plant your elderberry sticks? You should definitely see a fair bit of foliage coming on that plant, and you will probably see a flower or two. If you're really wanting to improve that plant's vigor, that first year, you can go ahead and pinch off those flowers because they will fruit in that first year, but you really don't want them investing all those energy resources into fruiting in that first year. So you can go ahead and pinch off those flowers and really force that plant to invest in root and vegetative structures. And that way you're set up for a really nice harvest of fruit in the second and third years of that plant. You should receive maybe a half crop in the second year, and in the third year you can expect a full crop of fruit after planting one of these sticks. At this point in the year, we're in July, not a great time of year to plant these sticks or to be harvesting these sticks. So you can actually harvest softwood cuttings from these plants if you have the facilities to maintain those softwood cuttings and propagate them that way. That's a very quick way to create a lot of plants in a hurry, and then those softwood cuttings would then be ready to plant that fall. So there's a couple of different ways that we can get an elderberry orchard established, but if you're gonna go with the hardwood propagation method, it's best to do it in the winter. Make sure you've got really nice, thick propagules. You really don't want anything smaller than your pinky or index finger in terms of diameter. The larger cuttings, the data has shown, are much more likely to survive and thrive in the establishment year. And that's probably just because there's so much more stored energy within that cutting. Most cuttings that you're going to purchase from growers will be what are called two-node cuttings. And that means that there are two leaf pairs on that propagule. Some producers might sell one-node cuttings, and I've seen good success with those as well. But really what you want to focus on is good timing and good preparation in advance of your planting. You want to make sure some of your more problematic weed species, those brushy weed species in particular, those perennial weed species, are not present in your future orchard site, because those can be a real pain to manage once your elderberries are established. So if you have maybe some wild elderberry that are growing on your farm or in a roadside that you've been watching for a while and you'd like to take some of those cuttings, we'll demonstrate how to take a hardwood propagule and turn it into a plant in the coming year. And again, you would typically do this in the dormant season once the plants are fully defoliated and are going to sleep for winter. And that way you're able to take those cuttings that you create, plant them in the winter, and get a nice establishment that spring. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to demonstrate is how you might take a softwood cutting. Now, in order to do a softwood cutting, you're going to need an area that is preferably shady and has good access to water. These are going to need to be watered frequently in order to survive. This is going to be taken from an actively growing portion of the plant. So something that is not lignified and dark and barky like this, but something rather that is green and you can tell is actively growing. So this area right here, it's a little bit small, but for the sake of demonstration, we can utilize something like this. So what you would want to do is find an area that looks strong and healthy, and we're going to create a one-node softwood cutting from this piece right here. So I'm going to take my shears and clip right here. This is our basal end, so we want to make sure that end goes into the soil. Planting these upside down does not typically result in high success. And then I'm going to snip just barely above that leaf pair right there. And so this is a softwood cutting that we can take and put into a small pot with potting soil or potting mix, and just make sure that we water it frequently. You know, having an automatic waterer set up on these is a really good way to ensure that these perform well. And another thing that we can do to really help this little propagule survive is actually take off some of this extra leaf material, because they're really not going to be doing a lot of photosynthesis while you're propagating this. So what we're just doing is focusing on building out some root hairs in this area right here. And this process can take, you know, a month and a half or so. But at this point in the year, in July, this is actually a pretty good way to propagate a lot of elderberries in a very short amount of time and set yourself up for success for a fall planting as opposed to a spring planting. And again, this is clonal propagation, so we have certainty that the genetic makeup of this plant is going to be that of the mother plant, whereas with a seed, we wouldn't necessarily know who the father was just based on the pollination uncertainty there. So that's a softwood cutting. So now let's take a look at probably a more common method of propagating elderberry. So I've tried to simulate what you might find, say, in late December in southwest Missouri or January in Missouri, a fully dormant elderberry cane. So you're not gonna find leaves coming off of this. It's just pretty much just gonna look like a stick coming out of the ground. And what we wanna do is really focus on the more basal portion of the cane here, because this is where most of the energy is going to be stored, and this is where our best propagules are going to come from. This has the greatest chance of success whenever we plant them. So if we want to make a 2-node cutting, what we'll do is we'll find one of these nodes. These are called leaf pairs, and they will actually look very similar to this when they're dormant. And we want to go a couple of inches below that basal leaf pair that we're going to be using, and just create a very sharply angled cut. So this is the portion of the propagule that we will be sticking into the ground, and we angle it in such a way that lets us know that goes into the ground, and we're gonna be able to differentiate between which end goes up. So there's a leaf pair right there, and then there's another node right here. So this would be a 2-node cutting that I'm about to create. I'll come just about an inch or so above that apical leaf pair right there, and I'll just cut that one flat. And so that right there is a really nice elderberry cutting that we can plant directly into the soil in the dormant season, say late January, early February, and set this propagule up for success for spring growth. I like to push this propagule into the soil and actually put this basal leaf pair just right below the soil surface. That makes sure that this pair is really nice and protected from the elements. It doesn't dry out. And what this propagule will do is it will callus this cut over, and then it will start to send root hairs out from this surface. And even this basal leaf pair right here, sometimes with that below the surface, you'll see roots coming out of that leaf pair as well. But that just gives us a really nice propagule with really high chance of success for spring growth. So wanted to give you guys an idea for what to expect in that first year after sticking those hardwood propagules in the ground in the winter. What should you expect to see that following spring and summer? So we're in July here in southwest Missouri, so these have had several months to break dormancy, put on some growth, and really start growing quite well. This has been an unseasonably wet year so far. We haven't had to irrigate this at all. So this might provide some unrealistic expectations, but this can be seen if you take good care of your planting. And you can actually see the original propagule that I planted this winter is right here, and from that propagule this elderberry plant has grown. Same with this right here. You can see that was the original propagule, and this is the growth that's come off of that leaf pair that we left on there. This would have been a 2-node cutting. We also have 1-node cuttings in here, experimenting with the differences in success rates between 1-node and 2-node cuttings and planting those at different times of the year. So as we mentioned, you might start to see some flowering even on those first year plants. There's nothing wrong with this. You're not going to get a lot of fruit off of them in the first year. So there's really no sense in allowing them to fruit. So I'm gonna force that plant to send some energy into its vegetative structures and into its root structures. That way in the second year of production, we can get a really nice fruit crop off of this planting. So that's about all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, you can always email me at o'neillc@missouri.edu, and I'd be happy to talk about elderberries with you.